Have you ever heard the breath of a mountain as it sleeps? Have you stood before a doorway not built by hands, but by memory? There are gates that open not to cities, not to temples, but to endings. And there, just beyond the hush of twilight, something watches. Stone that breathes. Mist that does not rise but sinks. Silence that isn't empty, but full. These are the first signs. When the wind no longer carries birdsong, but echoes of weeping, you are near. Long ago, or not long at all, for time does not follow its usual thread down here, a soul arrived at the edge of the mortal world. She was nameless now, for names do not pass the threshold. She had once been a woman, perhaps. A mother, a daughter, a singer, a weaver. All things folded beneath the shroud of forgetting, and before her, tall as eternity, black as drowned stars, stood the obsidian gates. They were not made to impress. They were made to remember. Forged not of metal, but of grief cooled into stone. Each slab carved from the silence of the first death. No handle, no lock, only presence. The soul did not knock. She simply waited. And from the dark behind the door came the sound, not a growl, not a roar, but a breath, a deep, rumbling inhale, as though the mountain itself had drawn her scent into its lungs. Cerberus. They say he has 3 heads. They say he is a beast of fury and teeth, but they say many things, and most of them are told by those who've never walked this close to shadow. He is not rage. He is not chaos. He is the last kindness and the first warning. The soul stood, trembling but still. The mist parted, and he emerged. 3 heads, yes, but not snarling. One sniffed the air, one watched her eyes, one looked somewhere beyond her, as if into the life she'd left behind. His fur was not of flesh, but of stone and ash. Veined with veins of silver light, the kind seen in dream ore beneath the earth. Chains hung from his necks, not to bind him, but to echo the oaths he had taken. He circled her, paws stirring no dust, claws clicking like the ticking of forgotten clocks. Did she remember her final breath? Perhaps. Or perhaps it was only reflected in the eyes of the head that watched her heart. Cerberus lowered one head. The second sniffed her hands. The third lay against the ground, listening. He was not judging. He was weighing. There is a difference, and when the moment was full, when all things that had been left unsaid were tasted in the hush between them, he stepped aside. The obsidian gates did not open with sound. They did not creak. They did not swing. They unveiled, and as though space had simply never existed, and now did not. She stepped forward, and as she did, she felt it. The turning, not of a lock, but of the world. There was no going back, not because it was forbidden, but because she had been unmade. The gates closed behind her like a forgotten breath. Cerberus returned to his post, not as a monster, but as a witness, his heads lowered to rest once more on the stone that remembered every step. They say he barks at those who try to escape, but the truth is quieter. He mourns. Each head sings a different note of sorrow, one for the living who forget, one for the dead who remember, one for the gods who never truly weep. He is not alone, but he is always lonely, bound not by force, but by sacred vow, a vow older than Olympus, older than Hades, a vow whispered in the void, before the world knew the meaning of end. His chains shimmer faintly in the dark, each link a name. Some still remembered, some long lost. The chain does not rattle, it pulses. Cerberus dreams sometimes. Yes, even he. He dreams of fields, not of blood, but of poppies. He dreams of being touched without fear. He dreams of a girl who once fed him figs, long before the world was shaped. But then the next soul comes, and he wakes. Another nameless breath, another echo of longing, another traveler who does not know they have already crossed. And so it goes. The obsidian gates do not sleep. Cerberus does not slumber. The path winds always forward, never again into light. But even so, the wind here carries something softer, not hope, for hope has no shape here. But remembrance, the tender ache of all that was and all that cannot be again. Cerberus watches it all, and when he growls, the sky holds its breath, but when he rests his stone chin on the soil, the underworld hums, low and deep, like the lullaby of time itself. The soul walks on. Behind her, the gates shimmer once more and vanish into shadow. Before her, the River Styx whispers in the dark, its waters waiting to taste her memory. But that is not this story, not yet. For now, listen. Beyond the veil of silence, beyond the mist that breathes, Cerberus stirs, and the gates remember. Have you ever drifted without wind, across water that forgets even your reflection? Have you heard the hush of a river that does not flow but waits? Waits with the patience of shadow, with the weight of every name ever unspoken. There is a river that sings in silence, and its name is whispered only by the dead. They call it Styx, the Black River, the Oathbinder, the unmaker of names. Its waters do not ripple. They remember. And where its darkness coils through the deep folds of the underworld, there stands a boat, and in that boat, a man, or something once shaped like a man, with eyes like old coins and hands carved by time. Charon. He does not beckon, he does not plead, he waits. That is his way, not out of malice, but because he knows all souls come to him in the end, and none arrive early. The soul who came after the obsidian gates stepped lightly onto the river bank. She felt nothing beneath her feet, not stone, not soil, only the weight of her own breathlessness. Charon stood there, tall, thin, robed in garments the color of faded dusk. His face was not hidden, but it was not truly seen, not because he veiled it, but because no one remembers it, not even the gods. He reached out a hand, and the soul trembled, for she had no coin, no obol placed on the tongue, no silver pressed beneath the tongue as tradition once demanded. She had died without rites, without fire or song, without farewell. But Charon did not turn her away. Instead, he listened, not with ears, but with the ancient knowing that lives in silence, and he heard what no one else had, the story of her breath, the rhythm of her sleep, the lullabies she once hummed to her child in the dark. Payment enough. He turned and stepped into the boat. Without a word, he extended his oar. She followed. The boat did not rock, the river did not stir, but the journey began. They say the River Styx is cold, but it is not temperature that chills. It is memory, for the Styx remembers every lie ever spoken, every promise broken, every love left unspoken, then lost. And as the boat glides, those memories rise, not as voices, but as echoes, shapes in the fog, reflections of what might have been. The soul looked over the edge of the vessel. She did not see her face. She saw her mother's last smile, the hand she didn't reach for. The night she stood in the rain and said nothing when everything should have been said. This is the toll of the Styx. Not gold, not silver, but the weight of who you were, who you almost became. Charon rowed. Each stroke of the oar stirred no water, only memory. The hush was thick as wool. Time fell away. Where do they go? The soul asked, though her mouth never moved. Those who speak my name. Charon did not reply, but a ripple passed through the river, and in its shape she saw a child, sleeping in a bed that once smelled of rosemary and smoke. Her child, still alive, still dreaming. The Styx did not offer comfort, it offered truth, and truth is not warm, but it is clean. The soul wept, not with tears, but with silence, the kind of silence that only the dead understand. A silence that empties and clarifies, a silence that says, you were, you are no longer. And yet, something remains. Charon's hands moved as they always had. Steady, ritual, reverent. He has ferried queens and beggars, heroes and monsters. He makes no distinction. For him, all grief is sacred. And beneath his boat, the river whispered to him in its oldest language. Not words, not names, just weight. He carried it all. For a moment, the soul thought she saw others, figures in boats that never passed, shadowed faces that looked like old lovers, like forgotten teachers, like the echo of someone she once was. But the river is not crowded. Time does not move linearly here. Every soul sails alone, even when they sit side by side. At last, or perhaps only a breath after it began, the other shore appeared. Not land, not rock, not even solid. It was more like a thought, a threshold. Charon brought the boat to stillness. No words, only the weight of passage. The moment when a soul becomes part of the place. The soul stepped out. There was no goodbye, no gesture. Charon was already turning the boat, already returning for the next. For that is what he does, what he has always done. He ferries not bodies, but echoes. And in his silence, the entire world is reflected. They say he cannot die. But perhaps it is more true to say he has already died so many times, there is nothing left to take. His oar dipped once more. The black river curled like smoke, and the boat vanished into the mist. The soul stood still. There was no applause, no arrival ceremony, only a path leading forward, into the meadows of the asphodel. But that is a whisper for another time. Now, listen. The river does not sing, but in its hush you will hear the truth of your own heart. And Charon, he listens still, for even silence has its stories. Have you walked through a place where time has no edge, where the air does not move, but remembers, where the grass does not grow, but dreams? There is a land beneath the land, soft, silver, and neither joyful nor sorrowful, a plain where all things forget their names and learn instead to drift, the fields of asphodel. Here lie the souls of the many, not cursed, not blessed, simply, still. They were not tyrants, they were not saints. They lived and they passed, with no stories etched in flame. And so they wander. The soul from before, the one who crossed the Styx with silence as her fare, now stepped onto this endless meadow. She felt the ground beneath her feet like a breath held for centuries. Not cold, not warm, just waiting. The sky above was gray, but it did not cloud. The horizon curved gently inward as if the world had grown tired of reaching, and around her they moved, shadows with shape, faces with almost eyes. The unremarked, the forgotten. No one looked at her, and yet every figure knew her presence. The soul walked forward, not with purpose, but with that slow, sacred drifting that all things learn in this place. Around her feet grew asphodels, flowers pale as moonlight, petals as thin as breath. They swayed in a wind that had never been born. She bent and touched one. It did not react, but in that moment she remembered her first cradle, the wood of it, the hum of a lullaby not sung for decades. The flower held it, just that one memory. No more. Each flower was a whisper, a single note from a symphony long vanished. And there were thousands, millions. Each step she took rustled against the murmuring field. A chorus of lives lived quietly, dreams never spoken aloud, fears buried without ceremony. She did not know what she was seeking, but the meadows have their own gravity. One figure passed close, a man, tall, translucent, barefoot. He looked at her, or through her, and he whispered something, not with sound, with presence. She did not understand it, not with her mind, but her bones stirred in reply. She followed, through paths that were not marked, beneath skies that did not shift, between souls who floated like smoke. They do not speak in the asphodel fields, not because they cannot, but because words are too sharp for this place. Everything is soft here, even grief. The man stopped at a pool. Not water, but glass. Still, dark. He knelt. She knelt. The surface shimmered and a face appeared. Her child, older now, sleeping in a chair beside a hearth, a book in hand, a blanket slipping from shoulder to floor, and beside that child, a flower, white, with 7 petals, an asphodel. The soul wept, not aloud, but in the way the grass bent toward her, and the sky dimmed slightly and the pool trembled. She remembered now. Not everything, just one name, his. The man beside her turned. He smiled, not the smile of reunion, the smile of remembering. It had been him, a boy once, a stranger on a road, a kindness offered, then forgotten. He had waited for her, or maybe she had waited for him. In the asphodel fields, all waits are eventually fulfilled, because time no longer interrupts. They sat together, no speech, no embrace, only nearness, and around them the field pulsed, as if the meadow itself sighed. It is said that asphodel was once sacred to Persephone, not because it bloomed brightly, but because it bloomed anyway. Here in the fields, the flowers bloom without sunlight, without warmth, only memory feeds them. Some souls wander forever. Some find echoes and rest. The soul felt something loosen inside her, a knot tied not by grief, but by forgetting. It loosened, then untied, and then floated away. She closed her eyes. The grass hummed. She lay down beside the man, not to sleep. There is no sleep here, only stillness. But the stillness held her. And yet, in the hush of the meadow, another path began to form, not beneath her, not before her, within her, a stone beneath her shoulder, a familiar pressure. She lifted it and carved into its surface. A spiral, a symbol not of endings but of return. She stood once more. The man did not follow. He did not need to. She walked again, not away but deeper. The fields continued, but the color began to shift. Not greener, not brighter, just changed. Somewhere, faintly, the ground grew steeper. Somewhere, the air changed texture, like breath after waking. The fields did not call her back. For once a soul has remembered something true. The meadows released them, and ahead there was stone, and echo, and a sound, rhythmic, heavy, like struggle. But that is another tale. For now, let the asphodels bloom behind her. Let the grasses return to silence. Let the forgotten continue their sacred wandering. The soul walks forward, carrying with her a single word, a name she did not know she had missed, and it glows, soft as starlight on bone. Have you ever watched a stone climb a hill, slow and certain, as if carrying the weight of stars? Have you felt the patient rhythm of breath and effort, the endless turning of a wheel that never ceases? There is a place, beneath the underworld's breath, where a single stone rests in eternal ascent, and a figure moves with it. A king, a sinner, a lesson carved in flesh and bone. Sisyphus. They say he was proud. They say he was cunning. They say the gods punished him to roll a boulder forever, a punishment without end, a task that mocks time itself. But these are only words. Words made by those who never saw the stone's slow dance. He is more than a man bound by pain. He is the living pulse of resistance, the heartbeat of a breath that refuses to still. The path is steep. The hill is endless. The sky above is gray, heavy with silence. Sisyphus grips the stone. His hands are calloused but steady. His breath comes slow, measured, a sacred rhythm beneath the weight of eternity. The stone moves. It does not stumble. It climbs. With every inch gained, a memory stirs beneath his skin. The voice of a daughter he loved, the echo of laughter in a sunlit room. The moment before betrayal, the cold breath of a god's curse. And still, he climbs. His eyes do not waver, not because he is blind, but because he sees something no one else does. Not punishment, not despair, possibility. Each step is an act of will, each push of stone, a prayer, not for release, but for meaning. The hill is a spiral, curving inward like the shell of a dream. The summit unreachable, and yet it is always in sight. Sisyphus climbs toward it, not to conquer, but to be known. Sometimes the stone slips, a breath is lost, a hand falters. But he does not fall, he rises again. For there is no bottom, only the climb. Around him the air hums, not with God's laughter, but with the slow song of perseverance. It is said the gods watch him, jealous and frustrated. But Sisyphus does not see them. He sees the sky, the stone, the path, and the pulse beneath his skin. In the quiet moments when his shoulders ache and his breath falters, he remembers the life that was, a mortal life, full of choices, of love, of loss, of fleeting joy. But here, in the endless climb, he finds something sacred. The stone becomes a part of him, not a burden, but a companion. Together they move, weight and flesh, will and stone, breath and earth. There is a rhythm to it, like the beating of a great drum beneath the world. The story does not end with the stone's fall. For when the summit is reached, and the stone slips from his grasp, he does not despair. He smiles, not because he is free, but because he knows. The climb is the meaning, and so he turns again to the base of the hill and begins. The wind carries his breath. The earth holds his footprints. The stone waits, and the world listens. Sisyphus is no longer a victim of fate. He is a symbol of the sacred struggle, the eternal dance of effort and hope. In the stillness of the underworld, his trial is a prayer whispered in stone. A story not of punishment, but of endurance. And as the sun sets behind the veil, the hill glows softly, like the ember of a heart that refuses to die. Have you ever felt the silence of a garden, where the shadows grow longer but the earth still holds its breath? Have you seen the slow turning of seasons in a single step, the weight of light and darkness balanced in one hand? There is a tale older than winter's first frost, a story whispered in the soft rustle of leaves, of a daughter, a queen, a soul caught between two worlds. Persephone. She is the thread woven through spring's first bloom and autumn's fading fire. Daughter of Demeter, goddess of grain and growth, bride of Hades, king of shadows and silence. Her story begins not with loss, but with choice. The earth sang beneath her feet, alive with the promise of renewal. The flowers nodded their heads, and the winds carried songs older than memory. She danced among them, light as a breath, her laughter the echo of dawn. But beneath the surface, a darker rhythm pulsed. The underworld waited, silent, patient. One day, as the sun fell soft behind the hills, Hades came, not as a tyrant, but as a shadow with depth, a king who knew the weight of silence. He took her by the hand, and she did not resist, not because she was captive, but because she was called. The journey downward was not sudden, but a slow unfolding, like the closing of a flower at dusk. She passed through halls carved from obsidian, where shadows whispered secrets only the brave dared to hear. Her heart did not falter, for she carried within her a light, a spark that neither darkness nor time could extinguish. In the underworld, Persephone became more than a daughter. She became a queen, not by birthright alone, but by the strength of her breath. She ruled with silence, with memory, with the sacred weight of knowing both light and dark. And above, Demeter waited, Her sorrow so vast, the earth itself wept. Fields grew barren, rivers ran dry, the wind held its song. But Persephone's return was promised, for the cycle must turn, the balance must hold. Each year she rises, from shadow to sunlight, from silence to song, and with her the earth blooms again. Yet her feet always return to the cold stone of the underworld, not as punishment, but as belonging. Between two realms she walks the line, the space where life and death meet, where sorrow and joy intertwine. Her story is not one of loss. It is a story of transformation, of becoming whole by embracing the divide. Some say the pomegranate seeds she ate bind her, but the truth is quieter. They say she tastes of the underworld, not because she is trapped there, but because she holds its power. She carries the weight of all who journey beneath the earth, the silent voices, the forgotten names, and in her return there is hope. Hope not of escape, but of acceptance. For in the dance of shadow and light, there is a sacred balance, a truth older than gods. Persephone teaches us this. To live fully, we must know darkness. To grow, we must sometimes fall. And to be whole, we must carry both summer and winter in our hearts. The seasons turn, the earth remembers. And Persephone walks, her footsteps the soft rhythm of a world forever changing. Have you ever heard a silence so deep it holds all the voices you have ever known, and yet calls for one you cannot recall? Have you felt a breath so still it carries the weight of memory itself, even as it slips like water through your fingers? In the deepest shadow of the underworld, beyond the river, beyond the meadows, beyond the stone and the silence, there lies a place untouched by time, a place where names are lost and souls sleep without dream or sorrow. It is a place without stories, without echoes, without sound. Here rests the oldest silence. The soul who wandered here knew none of this. She came with a heart full of questions and a name that felt like ash on her tongue. She stood at the edge of Lethe, the river of forgetting, its waters smooth as glass and dark as the space between stars. She reached out. Her fingers trembled. The water did not move. It did not speak. She drank, not for forgetfulness, but for the hope of release. Memories faded like mist. Faces blurred. Voices dimmed. She was no longer the woman who had crossed the Styx, nor the soul who had walked the asphodel fields. She was becoming, but something lingered. A name, a whisper, a spark beneath the fading. She searched within herself, but the name slipped away like a shadow at dusk. And so she wandered deeper, past the shores of forgetting, into the heart of Mnemosyne, the well of memory. Here, water is not taken, but given. Here, the soul drinks not to forget, but to remember. She knelt beside the well. Its surface shimmered, rippling with stars never seen by mortal eyes. She gazed into the depths. Images stirred, fragments of a life, flashes of laughter, the touch of a hand, the scent of earth after rain. The name began to surface. Not a name spoken, but a name felt. A name that was not hers alone, but shared by stars and stone, by shadow and breath. She spoke it softly, not aloud, not in words, but in the silence between, and the world listened. The well responded. A gentle light rose from its depths, spreading like dawn over forgotten hills. The soul remembered. She remembered who she was, not as a single thread, but as the whole tapestry. She was the echo of a river, the whisper of a leaf, the shadow of a star. She was all names forgotten and all names yet to be spoken. In that moment, she found peace. Not the peace of sleep, but the peace of becoming. A joining of breath and silence, memory and forgetting, life and death. The soul rose from the well, her name now a song on the wind. She walked back through the underworld, no longer lost, but found. The rivers welcomed her. The fields bowed beneath her feet. Cerberus watched without sorrow, and the gates opened wide. And beyond the gates, the world waited. The story of the forgotten name is not one of loss. It is a story of return. A story whispered on the breath of stars. A story held in the hush of silence.